The world does not fear the harmless. The world consumes them. This is the truth most men spend their entire lives avoiding, not because they don't see it, but because they are afraid of what it demands from them. People say they want peace. They say they want fairness. They say they want to be treated with respect. But in reality, people only respect what disrupts their comfort, what forces them to calculate, what forces them to hold their tongue and reconsider their intentions. People respect what they fear, not terror, not violence, not aggression, presence, precision, unbendable self-control. Fear is not shouting. Fear is not cruelty. Fear is not dominance. Fear is the silent understanding that you are not someone who can be moved without consequence. Fear is a boundary written in the air around you, long before you ever speak. It is the aura of a man who cannot be manipulated, cannot be rushed, cannot be guilted, cannot be controlled. A man whose silence is more unsettling than other men's anger. Most men use words to assert themselves. The feared man uses stillness. Most men try to convince others of their worth. The feared man lets absence speak louder than presence. Most men beg to be seen. The feared man is unforgettable even when he is not there. People know when they can step on you. They sense it. Not through logic, but through instinct. They feel weakness the same way animals smell blood, and they move toward that weakness without hesitation, not because they are evil, but because human nature gravitates toward what is easy to exploit. A man who is not feared is a man whose boundaries are invitations. A man who is not feared is a man chosen for convenience, used for comfort, and discarded without guilt. A man who is not feared lives on the terms of everyone who feels stronger than him. And here is the core truth that Machiavelli whispered into the world. If they do not fear disappointing you, they will abandon you the moment it benefits them. Not out of cruelty, but out of calculation. People follow what stabilizes them. People follow what intimidates their impulses. People follow what forces them to confront their own inconsistency. And nothing confronts inconsistency more violently than a man who refuses to crumble, a man who cannot be guilted, a man who cannot be provoked, a man who does not explain himself, a man who does not break in moments designed to break him. Such a man becomes a mirror of people's inadequacies, a reflection of their lack of discipline, a reminder of their emotional instability. And that mirror is what they fear. Fear is not created by force. Fear is created by contrast. The contrast between your discipline and their chaos, your clarity and their confusion, your silence and their insecurity. Fear is the shadow cast by your self-control. It is not aggression that makes people cautious around you. It is the realization that you do not collapse. And here is the darkest psychological truth. People don't fear what can hurt them. People fear what exposes them. They fear the man who does not fold where they would fold. They fear the man who does not break where they would break. They fear the man who is not controlled by the things that control them. They fear the man who does not seek approval because their own self-worth depends on it. They fear the man who does not need validation because their lives revolve around chasing it. They fear the man who can say no without flinching. A feared man is not a monster. He is a standard that exposes the weakness of everyone standing next to him. The world does not fear cruelty. Cruel men are predictable, chaotic, easy to provoke, easy to destroy. The world fears discipline. The world fears structure. The world fears stillness. The world fears the man who looks directly into it and does not blink, because that man is not controlled by emotion. He is not controlled by others. He is not controlled by fear itself. He has mastered it, and so he becomes it. Fear is not his weapon. Fear is his reflection, and that reflection is what the world cannot handle. Power is not loud. Power is not dramatic. Power is not chaotic. Power is the quiet ability to alter the behavior of others without raising your voice, without begging, without force. Real power is invisible. It does not announce itself. It does not perform. It does not demand attention. Real power is felt. It shifts the air in a room before you speak. It forces others to reevaluate their intentions before they reveal them. It makes people adjust their tone before they open their mouth. People like to imagine that power comes from love, from being liked, admired, appreciated. But Machiavelli understood what the world still refuses to learn. Loyalty built on affection collapses the moment the wind changes. Love is soft. Love is unstable. Love is dependent on staying convenient. Fear is not emotional. Fear is structural. Love invites closeness. Fear invites calculation, and calculation is far more reliable than affection. Most men want to be loved because love feels safe, because love feels gentle, because love feels warm. But safety, gentleness, warmth, these are comforts, and comfort has never been the foundation of power. Power grows in discomfort. Power grows in clarity. Power grows in the recognition that you cannot be used. When people fear you, even slightly, they don't act on impulse. They act on intention. They think, they measure, they restrain. Fear does not control people. Fear controls their worst instincts. That is why being feared creates order, not dominance, not oppression, order. Because people who are cautious are far less dangerous than people who are careless. Think about the moments in your life when you were disrespected. It didn't happen because the other person was brave. It happened because they felt safe enough to be careless with you. Disrespect grows in the absence of fear. But even a small amount of fear, not terror, not intimidation, just awareness, changes everything. A man who is slightly feared is treated with caution, and caution is the real currency of power. Caution is what keeps people from crossing lines. Caution is what makes people think before acting. Caution is what separates what they want to do from what they dare to do. A feared man is the line people do not cross unless they are ready for the consequences. It is not about harming anyone. It is about making sure people know you will not allow yourself to be harmed. This is where power begins. Not in what you can do to others, but in what you refuse to let others do to you. Weak men think power is about control. Strong men know power is about restraint. Weak men shout. Strong men remain silent. Weak men beg for respect. Strong men let behavior reveal the truth. Weak men cling to love. Strong men understand that fear sustains what love cannot. Fear does not win affection. Fear earns respect from people who would never give it willingly. Fear forces others to confront themselves, their weaknesses, their insecurities, their lack of discipline. And that confrontation is what they attribute to you. They do not fear the man. They fear the reflection he forces them to see. This is why the disciplined will always be feared by the undisciplined. The calm will always be feared by the chaotic. The detached will always be feared by the dependent. And the self-possessed will always be feared by those who live outside themselves. Fear is not darkness. Fear is clarity. Fear is seeing human nature without illusions. And once you see it for what it truly is, broken, impulsive, inconsistent, you understand why Machiavelli said, "It is safer to be feared than loved." Because power cannot rest on anything that shifts. It must rest on something stable, predictable, unshakable. Fear, at its purest, is recognition. Recognition that you are a man who will not fold for the comfort of others. Recognition that you are not shaped by the noise of the world. Recognition that your value is not negotiable. Fear is not a weapon. Fear is an anchor, and the man who carries it doesn't rule others. He simply refuses to be ruled. People worship the idea of being loved. They cling to it like it is a shield. They believe love protects. But Machiavelli saw what most people refuse to admit. Love is fragile. Love is conditional. Love is selfish. Love depends on constant maintenance, approval, validation, emotional warmth, reassurance. Love is a currency that loses value the moment it stops being convenient. People don't stay loyal to those they love. They stay loyal to those they need. And need is born not from affection, but from the fear of consequences. A man who is loved for what he provides: comfort, softness, safety, attention. A man who is feared is respected for what he protects: his boundaries, his identity, his stability. Love has never been power. It has only ever been an emotion that people abandon as soon as a stronger emotion appears. Most men want to be loved because they want to avoid conflict. They want to feel accepted. They want to be liked. They do not realize that being liked is the weakest form of influence. Being liked requires performance. Being liked requires compliance. Being liked requires softness. People love you when you don't challenge them. People love you when you make them comfortable. People love you when you carry the weight they should be carrying themselves. Love gives others access. Fear gives others limits. Love opens the door. Fear guards it. Love is voluntary. Fear is instinctive. Love tries to persuade. Fear requires no explanation. This is why men who are only loved are always surprised when betrayal arrives. They cannot understand how someone who cared could shift so easily. But Machiavelli explains it plainly. Men love at their own pleasure, which means they love when it benefits them. They love when it feels good. They love when you fit into the story they have created for themselves. But fear has nothing to do with pleasure. Fear is rooted in what they do not want to lose. Fear is rooted in what they dare not provoke. Fear is rooted in what they are unwilling to test. A feared man is not necessarily loved, but he is not abandoned lightly. Love pulls people toward you. Fear holds them in place. Love fades. Fear endures. Love is emotional. Fear is structural. Love can be forgotten. Fear cannot be ignored. A loved man is treated well until the moment he becomes inconvenient. A feared man is treated well even when he becomes inconvenient. People speak the truth to those they love because they trust their forgiveness. People measure their words with those they fear because they respect their boundaries. Love removes limits. Fear reinforces them. Love invites people in. Fear stops them from stepping too far. This is why many men who are good, who are kind, who are loving, find themselves taken for granted, taken advantage of, and finally discarded. Not because they were not valuable, but because they lacked the one thing that makes value recognizable: the presence of consequence. People do not fear good intentions, they fear consequences. Without consequences, You are not seen as strong. You are seen as safe. And people do not follow the safe. They use them more. A man who wants to be loved becomes a servant to the emotions of others. A man who is feared becomes the center of gravity, that others orbit around fear, is not about cruelty. Fear is about creating a psychological structure where your worth cannot be ignored. And here lies the final truth. Love makes people bold with you. Fear makes people careful. You decide which of these will protect you in the long run. Fear does not begin in the mind. Fear begins in the body. It is instinct, older than language, older than morality, older than logic. When someone fears you, their body reacts before their thoughts do. Their breath shortens, their muscles tighten, their voice lowers, their eyes shift. They become careful. Fear is not a choice. Fear is a response to something that triggers instability inside them, and that something is your stability. People fear what they cannot destabilize, what they cannot seduce, what they cannot manipulate, what they cannot rush. The most intimidating thing in the world is a man who does not collapse in situations where everyone else would. People fear composure because it exposes their lack of control. They fear your calm because they know they would panic in your place. They fear your stillness because they live in noise. They fear your independence because they cannot survive without approval. They fear your detachment because they are addicted to being needed. Fear is the subconscious acknowledgement that the other person has mastered something you haven't. Not aggression, not dominance, not anger. Mastery of self. A self-controlled man is a threat to every person who lacks control. A disciplined man is a mirror that shows others their undisciplined lives. A silent man is a mirror that shows others how loud and insecure they are. A man who does not react emotionally is a mirror that shows others how much they depend on emotional manipulation. This is why people do not fear strength. People fear difference. People fear depth. People fear control. People fear inner power that does not require display. Most men break at the first sign of pressure, at the first hint of conflict, at the slightest threat of rejection. But the man who does not break, the man who does not panic, does not rush, does not beg, does not collapse, well, that man becomes a psychological disturbance to everyone around him. They cannot understand how he stays calm. They cannot understand how he stays collected. They cannot understand how he stays untouched in moments designed to shatter him. And what we do not understand, we fear. Because uncertainty is the most ancient fear of the human mind. People do not need to believe you can destroy them. They only need to believe they cannot destroy you. Fear emerges when someone realizes their usual strategies will not work on you. They cannot guilt you. They cannot pressure you. They cannot seduce you with validation. They cannot confuse you. They cannot overwhelm you. This destroys their sense of control. And fear is always born when control is lost. People fear disappointing a man who is not dependent on them. People fear lying to a man who sees through excuses. People fear disrespecting a man who does not tolerate disrespect. People fear challenging a man who does not fear conflict. People fear manipulating a man who does not react emotionally. People fear abandoning a man who can walk away first. Bottom line, fear is the natural reaction to a man who cannot be controlled. It is not you they fear. It is their own failure in front of you. People don't fear the strong. People fear what reveals their weakness. And the man who is calm, clear, collected, and indifferent to approval. That man becomes the most feared presence in any room, not because he seeks fear, but because he embodies everything others cannot master. Self-control, self-respect, self-definition. People fear what reminds them of everything they are not. And a truly disciplined man is a reminder that most people are slaves to their impulses. That is why fear is not about force. Fear is about reflection, a reflection that cannot be ignored, a reflection that cannot be manipulated, a reflection that cannot be dismissed. Fear is the shadow cast by your inner strength, and the weaker the people around you, the longer that shadow becomes. There is a pattern in how people treat the man they do not fear. It is universal, predictable, mathematically consistent, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. People test the unfeared. They push him, they probe him, they stretch his boundaries to see where he breaks, not because they hate him, but because he gives them the one thing they cannot resist. Permission to man who is not feared permits disrespect, not through words, but through absence of consequence. People can sense it. They can smell it, the same way they sense who they can lie to, who they can manipulate, who they can drain. People take from the unfeared because he shows he will not stop them. Deep inside, everyone knows exactly what they can get away with. And with a man who is not feared, the answer is always the same: everything and more. People do not respect the unfeared, not because he lacks worth, but because his worth is undefended. People respect what they cannot cross, and people cross every inch of a boundary that isn't reinforced. Watch how people act around a man they do not fear. They interrupt him, they speak over him, they lie to him, they postpone him, they take advantage of his time, they demand explanations, they seek emotional labor, they assume forgiveness, they expect softness, they offer minimal loyalty, they feel entitled to his patience. People feel brave around the unfeared, brave enough to insult him subtly, brave enough to ignore him, brave enough to treat his kindness as obligation. Being unfeared turns you into a resource, something people consume rather than respect. And the more you give, the more they expect. The more you forgive, the more they abuse. The more you tolerate, the more invisible you become. People don't fear hurting a man who fears confrontation, a man who fears losing approval, a man who fears being alone, a man who fears disappointing others. People fear the man who fears nothing but losing himself. There is a quiet cruelty in human nature. We do not value what tolerates us too easily. We do not honor what allows itself to be mistreated. We do not respect what bends without resistance. A man who is not feared invites others to bring out their worst behavior, not because they are evil, but because he does not stop them. Love does not stop them. Kindness does not stop them. Patience does not stop them. Good intentions do not stop them. Only fear stops people from crossing lines. Fear interrupts impulse. Fear interrupts entitlement. Fear interrupts selfishness. Fear is the pause between what someone wants to do and what they dare to do. Without that pause, people act with their instincts, and instincts are ruthless. People become careless around the unfeared, reckless, casual, disrespectful, because there is no cost. Everything in human behavior is influenced by cost. People control themselves in front of the feared because the cost is unclear. People lose control in front of the unfeared because the cost is nothing. The unfeared man is the easiest man to use, to drain, to manipulate, to discard, not because he is weak, but because he is safe. And here is the darkest truth no one wants to admit. People abuse what feels safe. People betray what feels safe. People leave what feels safe. Safety without boundaries is not love, it is exploitation. The unfeared man becomes the emotional garbage bin for everyone, too weak to handle their own chaos. He becomes the unpaid therapist, the emotional sponge, the convenient fallback, the forever available option, the tool, the backup plan. And when he finally breaks under the weight of all he tolerated, people say, "Why are you upset? We thought you were fine." Of course they did, because he never showed them a version of himself they would be afraid to lose. Fear is not built through aggression. Fear is built through identity. A feared man is not created by force or cruelty or dominance. He is created by the removal of weakness. Most men try to become feared by projecting strength. They raise their voice, they posture, they perform. But performance collapses. Fear is not performance. Fear is posture of the soul. Machiavelli warned, "A man who seeks to appear powerful will be despised when the truth is revealed." Fear comes not from appearance, but from consistency. Here is how a man becomes feared without ever raising his hand. 1. Be unreactive. People fear what they cannot provoke. When someone tries to trigger you, and you remain still, not silent out of submission, but silent out of control, they feel the weight of their failure. Your calmness is a reminder of their instability. Machiavelli wrote, "The one who is slow to anger is feared more than the one who is quick to harm." People are terrified by a man whose emotions do not dance on their strings. 2. Be decisive. Indecision kills respect. Hesitation kills authority. A feared man decides quickly and does not justify himself, not because he is stubborn, but because he trusts his own mind. You want to become feared. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop negotiating your worth. Machiavelli said, "A prince who cannot decide invites others to decide for him." People fear the man whose decisions are final. 3. Be detached. Attachment is leverage. Detachment is immunity. A man who can walk away without looking back is untouchable. People fear losing access to someone who does not need them. They fear disappointing someone who can replace them easily. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. Machiavelli observed, "Men are less cautious when they believe you need them." A man who needs nothing is a man everyone fears to lose for. Control your time. Time is the purest currency of power. A feared man is not always available. He is not always present. He is not always responsive. He allows others to wait, to wonder, to adjust. Scarcity creates value. Predictability destroys it. Machiavelli warned leaders, "He who is available to all is respected by none." To be feared, your time must feel earned. 5. Enforce consequences without emotion. Consequences make fear real, but consequences delivered calmly make fear permanent. The moment you tolerate disrespect, even once, you teach people exactly how to treat you. The moment you enforce consequence, without yelling, without explanation, without theatrics, you become a man people measure themselves against. Machiavelli wrote, "Punish when necessary, but never in anger. Anger makes punishment emotional. Calmness makes it structural." 6. Value yourself above all. A feared man does not sacrifice his identity to be accepted. He does not water himself down to make others comfortable. He does not shrink to fit into smaller places. He lives by internal laws, internal standards, internal truth. People fear a man who carries his own authority. And here is the paradox Machiavelli understood. It is not power that makes a man feared. It is his unwillingness to surrender it. People fear a man who refuses to give himself away. 7. Silence is your most dangerous weapon. Silence is the moment when people reveal themselves. Silence is the testing ground of their insecurities, their projections, their fear. A feared man lets silence speak for him. He knows that what is not said creates more pressure than what is said loudly, Machiavelli observed. The powerful speak little, the wise even less. Silence isn't emptiness. Silence is dominance. 8. Live in a way that cannot be replicated. There is one final element. People fear what they cannot become. If a man is strong through brute force, others will try to become stronger. If a man is loud, others will shout louder. If a man is violent, others will retaliate. But a man who is disciplined, calm, detached, imperturbable, self-defined, internally sovereign, this man is unreplicable, and what cannot be replicated cannot be challenged. Fear is born from the space between you and the man they know they can never be. Machiavelli never wrote about fear as cruelty. He wrote about fear as clarity. To him, the world was not a battlefield of good and evil, but a landscape of human nature, predictable, ruthless, unchanged by time. And his darkest insight is also his most accurate. Men forget the death of their father faster than the loss of their inheritance. People pretend to be moral, but their true loyalty is to their interests, not to values, not to promises, not to emotions, to benefits. Machiavelli understood this so deeply that his writings still disturb people today, not because they are cruel, but because they expose what we try to hide about ourselves. He stripped the world of romantic illusions and revealed its bones. And at the center of those bones was this truth: men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous. Not occasionally, not under stress, by design. Human nature is inconsistent, driven by fear and desire, pulled by convenience, shaped by immediate rewards. People admire strength until strength demands something from them. People praise kindness until kindness becomes inconvenient. People respect honesty until honesty confronts them. A man who depends on the loyalty of others is a man building his life on shifting sand. That is why Machiavelli wrote, "He who builds on the people builds on mud." Because affection is unstable, admiration is unreliable, consensus is temporary. But fear creates structure, not tyranny. Structure forces consistency on those who cannot produce it themselves. Structure keeps people predictable who would otherwise be erratic. Structure forces clarity in those who live in emotional fog. This is why leaders who are only loved fall quickly and dramatically. Their foundation is emotional, and emotions betray. People love a leader when it benefits them. They abandon him when the wind changes direction. Machiavelli noted, "The promise made was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Human loyalty shifts with immediate need. Love changes with circumstance. Admiration collapses under discomfort. That is why the man who seeks to be loved dies by disappointment, while the man who is feared survives by structure. Fear creates a predictable pattern of behavior. People know where the line is, and they know what it costs to cross it. Love has no such line. Love dissolves boundaries. Love opens doors too wide. But fear sharpens them. Fear defines them. Fear protects them. This is why Machiavelli concluded with his most famous, most misunderstood line, "It is safer to be feared than loved." Not better, not more noble, not more satisfying. Safer. because safety is the foundation of power, and power is the foundation of survival. A loved leader is dependent on the emotions of others. A feared leader is dependent only on his own consistency. A loved man must maintain affection. A feared man must maintain discipline. A loved man chases approval. A feared man commands precision. Machiavelli did not praise cruelty. He praised control. Control of self. Control of boundaries. Control of consequences. A feared man does not need to punish often. His presence is enough. A loved man must constantly restore affection. And affection tires the heart. Machiavelli knew that fear is less exhausting than love, because fear maintains itself. Fear does not require constant feeding. Fear does not require constant reassurance. Fear does not require emotional labor. Fear sustains power. Love consumes it. And here is the final shadow of Machiavelli's philosophy. The world rewards the appearance of virtue, but follows the logic of power. People claim they want kindness, but they follow strength. People claim they value honesty, but they obey certainty. People claim they prefer gentleness, but they fear consequence. The world runs not on ideals, but on instincts. And instinct bows not to affection, but to fear. Not fear of harm. Fear of the man who will not collapse. Fear of the man who cannot be controlled. Fear of the man whose identity is his own. The feared man is not defined by force or by threat or by dominance. He is defined by three silent pillars: boundaries, silence, detachment. These three are more powerful than any display of strength, because they create a psychological environment where others regulate themselves, not out of love, not out of admiration, out of caution. 1. Boundaries, the edge others feel before they touch it. A boundary is not a rule you state. A boundary is a reality you enforce. Most men speak their boundaries and then collapse the moment they are tested. They say, "I will not tolerate disrespect," but tolerate it. They say, "I don't repeat myself," but repeat themselves. They say, "I walk away from disrespect," but never walk. Words without consequence teach the world one lesson. You are safe to cross, Machiavelli warned leaders. He who allows one offense invites another. Boundaries are not what you say. Boundaries are what you protect. A feared man protects them without apology, without hesitation, without debate. He does not negotiate his standards. He does not explain his decisions. He does not justify his limits. A boundary is powerful only when it has a cost, and a feared man never lets that cost go unpaid. 2. Silence, the force stronger than speech. Silence is misunderstood. People assume silence is weakness, timidity, uncertainty. But silence can be a blade. Silence forces others to confront themselves. When you speak little, they overthink. When you explain nothing, they speculate. When you react minimally, their insecurities fill the void. Your silence becomes their mirror, and mirrors terrify people. Machiavelli said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." The wise man speaks only when speaking changes something. A feared man does not talk to correct perceptions. He lets people reveal their intentions. He knows, if a person cannot understand you in silence, they will not understand you in words. Silence is not absence. Silence is pressure. Silence is weight. Silence is presence. Silence is discipline. People raise their voices because they lack authority. A feared man does not raise his voice. His quietness is command enough. 3. Detachment, the source of unbreakable power. Attachment is leverage. Detachment is immunity. A man who is attached to attention to approval, to validation, to closeness, to outcomes, is a man who can be controlled. Machiavelli wrote, "He who depends on others is lost." Dependency is a leash, even if it's invisible. The feared man possesses the rarest form of power. He does not need what others can take away. He can walk away from anyone at any time without emotional collapse. He can end conversations, end relationships, end negotiations, end access calmly, quietly, without revenge, without theatrics. Detachment is terrifying to people who need attachment to feel secure. People fear losing someone who is not afraid to lose them, and that fear creates a new form of respect, one that cannot be faked and cannot be replaced. A man who does not cling is a man others cling to. A man who does not chase is a man others pursue. A man who does not beg is a man others fear disappointing. Detachment is not coldness. Detachment is sovereignty. You are still capable of love, of connection, of loyalty, but you are not owned by any of it. Machiavelli's insight here is brutal. Men are bound by obligation when it is useful. If your presence is too available, it becomes too replaceable, but the man who is detached creates value simply by existing. People study his reactions. People weigh their words. People fear losing access to someone who does not give it freely. And that fear, that subtle, quiet, instinctive fear, is what forms the aura of the revered. Not cruelty, not domination, self-possession, self-governance, self-respect. Boundaries create shape. Silence creates mystery. Detachment creates gravity. And together, they form the presence of a man who cannot be crossed without consequence. Most people confuse fear with cruelty. They think to be feared you must harm, threaten, dominate, or destroy. But that misunderstanding reveals their weakness. Cruelty is emotional. Cruelty is reactive. Cruelty is sloppy. Cruelty is insecure. Cruelty is what weak men use to imitate power. Fear is different. Fear is controlled. Fear is quiet. Fear is measured. Fear is created not by pain, but by predictability. Machiavelli wrote, "It is cruelty that makes men hated, not fear. Cruelty provokes rebellion. Fear prevents it. Cruelty demands obedience. Fear inspires caution. Cruelty burns through loyalty. Fear stabilizes it. A cruel man is feared only until the moment someone brave enough or desperate enough rises against him. A feared man who is not cruel is feared forever." Because cruelty attacks the body, fear reforms the mind. People hate cruelty because cruelty is chaotic. Chaotic people are dangerous because they cannot be predicted. But a man who creates fear through discipline, through stillness, through structure, this man becomes a point of orientation in a world ruled by impulses. Machiavelli understood the balance. Let him be feared in such a way that he avoids being hated. Fear without hatred is the highest form of power. Fear mixed with hatred is the lowest. Hatred leads to conspiracies. Fear leads to caution. Hatred inspires revenge. Fear inspires restraint. Hatred multiplies danger. Fear eliminates it. A man who is feared but not hated is a man who controls the room without ever raising his voice. Because fear is not about dominance. Fear is about unshakable boundaries. Fear is about the recognition that you will not bend to accommodate the weakness of others. Fear is about the realization that your identity is not up for negotiation. Cruel men demand respect. Feared men generate it. Cruel men shout. Feared men are silent. Cruel men need the world to kneel. Feared men stand alone and the world adjusts. This is why the feared man is the most stable figure in any environment, not because he commands strength, but because he commands himself. and those who command themselves are feared by those who are slaves to their emotions. The cruel man cannot control himself, so he tries to control others. The feared man controls himself, so others control themselves around him. That is true power. A feared man does not seek domination. He seeks order, order inside himself, order in how people treat him, order in what he allows, order in what he refuses. Machiavelli wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men around him." And who surrounds the feared man? Not sycophants, not parasites, not manipulators, not emotional vampires, but people who respect boundaries, people who measure their words, people who treat him carefully. Because fear regulates them when their nature cannot. Fear makes the weak behave. Fear makes the impulsive think. Fear makes the selfish hesitate. Fear makes the deceitful honest or silent. Fear is the final filter through which all intentions must pass. Cruelty breaks the world. Fear organizes it. Cruelty is loud. Fear is quiet. Cruelty is temporary. Fear is permanent. Cruelty is emotional. Fear is structural. Cruelty is desperate. Fear is sovereign. Cruelty collapses. Fear endures. And now, here is the deepest doctrine Machiavelli ever implied, the truth behind all truths. To command others, you must first command yourself. This is the essence of being feared. When you master your impulses, others hesitate with theirs. When you master your emotions, others adjust theirs. When you master your silence, others reveal themselves. When you master your detachment, others cling tighter. When you master your boundaries, others walk carefully. When you master your calm, others feel their chaos. A feared man is not the strongest, the biggest, the richest, the loudest. A feared man is the one with the fewest weaknesses, not because he hides them, but because he controls them. The world does not fear cruelty. The world fears a man who cannot be broken by the things that break everyone else. A man who cannot be bent by emotion, by pressure, by guilt, by approval, by the need to be loved. Fear is not a weapon. Fear is a statement that says, I belong to myself. And a man who belongs to himself, fully, completely, unshakably, is the most feared man in any room. Not because he seeks to rule, but because he refuses to be ruled. And so the doctrine is simple. Be feared not through harm, but through self-mastery. Because if you cannot be both, as Machiavelli said, it is safer to be feared than loved. Safer, stronger, lasting. Be feared, or be forgotten, or